A dedicated pediatric nurse was fired for using unconventional therapy to calm terrified children. But when the hospital's CEO discovered what really happened, nobody was prepared for his response. This is the story of Diana Rodriguez, a woman whose gentle touch and innovative spirit would shake the very foundations of Riverside General Hospital. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of Riverside General Hospital hummed their familiar tune as Diana Rodriguez walked through the pediatric wing on what would become the most challenging day of her nursing career. Her soft-soled shoes made barely a whisper against the polished linoleum floors, a deliberate choice that reflected her understanding of how even the smallest sounds could affect her young patients. Diana had been working the children's ward for 8 years, and in that time she had developed an intuitive sense for what each child needed most. At 34, Diana possessed the rare combination of clinical expertise and maternal instinct that made her invaluable in pediatric care. Her warm brown eyes held the kind of compassion that could calm a frightened toddler with just a glance, and her voice carried the gentle cadence of someone who had spent countless hours reading bedtime stories to children who were far from home. Today, like every day, she carried a small leather bag alongside her standard medical supplies. Inside were items that most hospital administrators would consider unusual: soft brushes with natural bristles, small wooden instruments for creating, gentle tapping sounds, and various textured fabrics that could provide comfort through touch. The morning started like any other in the pediatric wing. Diana checked her patient roster and noted that several children were scheduled for procedures that would likely cause significant anxiety. 7-year-old Tommy Williams was due for his 3rd round of chemotherapy, a process that had become increasingly traumatic for the young boy who had developed severe medical anxiety following his leukemia diagnosis. In room 412, 5-year-old Lucy Chen was preparing for surgery to repair a congenital heart defect, her first time away from her parents overnight. The child had been inconsolable since admission, refusing to eat or sleep, her tiny frame shaking, with fear every time a medical professional entered her room. Diana had witnessed this pattern countless times. Traditional approaches to pediatric anxiety often relied heavily on sedatives or restraints, methods that worked but left children feeling powerless and traumatized. Over the years, she had begun experimenting with alternative approaches, drawing from her background in therapeutic communication and her natural ability to connect with children. She had discovered that autonomous sensory meridian response techniques, commonly known as ASMR, could produce remarkable calming effects in anxious pediatric patients. The technique wasn't something she had learned in nursing school. Diana had stumbled upon ASMR therapy during her own recovery from burnout 3 years earlier. Working in pediatric oncology had taken its toll, and she had been struggling with insomnia and anxiety when a friend recommended trying ASMR videos for relaxation. The gentle sounds, soft whispers, and repetitive motions had provided her with the first peaceful sleep she had experienced in months. As she learned more about the neurological basis of ASMR responses, she began to wonder if these techniques might benefit her young patients. Her first attempt had been with a 6-year-old boy who was terrified of needle procedures. Traditional distraction techniques had failed, and the child was becoming increasingly agitated with each failed attempt to start an IV. In desperation, Diana had begun speaking in the same soft, rhythmic tone she had heard in ASMR videos, while gently brushing the child's arm with a soft, bristled brush. The transformation had been remarkable. The boy's breathing slowed, his muscles relaxed, and he remained calm throughout the entire procedure. Word of Diana's success had spread quietly among the nursing staff. Colleagues began requesting her assistance with their most anxious patients, and gradually she developed a reputation as the nurse who could calm any child. Her techniques evolved to include gentle tapping patterns, soft fabric textures, and carefully modulated vocal tones that seemed to activate the same neural pathways that made ASMR effective for relaxation and anxiety reduction. Dr. Marcus Thompson, the head of pediatric medicine, had initially been skeptical but tolerant of Diana's methods. A man in his early 50s with traditional views on medical practice, Dr. Thompson believed in evidence-based medicine and had little patience for what he considered alternative therapies. However, he couldn't argue with results, and Diana's patients consistently showed lower anxiety scores and required fewer sedatives than the department average. The trouble began on a particularly busy Tuesday morning when the hospital was understaffed due to a flu outbreak among medical personnel. Diana was assigned to cover additional patients, including several children who were scheduled for procedures that typically required significant anxiety management. She had been working with Lucy Chen for over an hour, using gentle brush strokes and soft humming to help the little girl relax before her heart surgery. Lucy had been admitted 3 days earlier, and her anxiety had been escalating with each passing hour. Traditional approaches had failed completely. Child life specialists had tried play therapy, music therapy, and even pet therapy, but nothing had been able to penetrate the wall of fear that surrounded the 5-year-old. Her parents were distraught, watching their daughter retreat further into herself with each failed attempt to provide comfort. Diana had approached Lucy's case with particular care, spending time simply sitting beside the child's bed, allowing her presence to become familiar before introducing any therapeutic interventions. She had noticed that Lucy responded positively to certain sounds, the gentle rustle of fabric, the soft tapping of fingers against wood, the whispered counting that Diana used to mark time. Gradually, she had introduced the ASMR techniques that had proven successful with other children. The breakthrough came when Diana began using a combination of gentle brushing motions along Lucy's arm, while maintaining a steady, rhythmic tapping pattern with a small wooden instrument. Lucy's breathing, which had been rapid and shallow for days, began to slow and deepen. Her rigid posture relaxed, and for the first time since admission, she fell into a peaceful sleep that lasted for over 2 hours. Dr. Thompson discovered Diana using these techniques during his morning rounds. He entered Lucy's room expecting to find the usual scene of distress and found instead a calm, sleeping child and a nurse who was gently organizing what appeared to be non-medical instruments. His initial reaction was confusion, followed quickly by suspicion and then anger as he realized that Diana was using unauthorized therapeutic methods on his patients. The confrontation was swift and decisive. Dr. Thompson demanded an immediate explanation for what he termed inappropriate and unprofessional conduct. Diana attempted to explain the scientific basis for ASMR therapy and its proven effectiveness with pediatric anxiety, but Dr. Thompson was unmoved. He viewed her methods as pseudoscience at best and potentially harmful alternative medicine at worst. Within hours, Diana found herself sitting in the hospital administrator's office, facing formal charges of practicing outside her scope of nursing responsibilities and using unauthorized therapeutic interventions. Amanda Foster, the head of pediatric nursing, was present during the meeting, her expression a mixture of sympathy and resignation. Amanda had witnessed the positive effects of Diana's methods, but was bound by hospital protocol and Dr. Thompson's authority. The hospital's position was clear. Diana had overstepped the boundaries of nursing practice by introducing therapeutic techniques that were not part of standard medical protocols. Despite the lack of any negative outcomes and the obvious benefits to her patients, the administration viewed her actions as a liability risk that could not be tolerated. Dr. Thompson recommended immediate termination, arguing that allowing such practices to continue would set a dangerous precedent and potentially expose the hospital to legal action. Diana's defense was heartfelt but ultimately futile. She presented documentation of improved patient outcomes, reduced medication requirements, and positive feedback from families whose children had benefited from her care. She explained the neurological mechanisms behind ASMR responses and provided research supporting its use in anxiety management. None of it mattered to an administration that prioritized protocol compliance over patient outcomes. The termination was effective immediately. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Diana was escorted from the building that same afternoon, her 8 years of dedicated service reduced to a cardboard box containing personal items and commendations that now seemed meaningless. As she walked through the pediatric wing for the last time, she could hear Lucy Chen crying in her room, the child's anxiety having returned full force in the absence of the calming presence that had provided her only respite. The injustice of the situation was compounded by the timing. Diana's firing came just 2 days before Lucy's scheduled surgery, leaving the little girl without the one person who had been able to provide her with comfort and peace. Tommy Williams, the young chemotherapy patient, was also left without the supportive care that had made his treatments bearable. The ripple effects of Diana's termination would soon become apparent to everyone in the pediatric wing. But by then she was gone, her gentle voice and healing touch replaced by the harsh reality of institutional inflexibility. As Diana drove away from Riverside General Hospital that evening, she carried with her not just the pain of professional rejection, but the knowledge that children who depended on her care would now face their medical challenges without the comfort she had worked so hard to provide. The irony was bitter. In trying to protect the hospital from perceived risks, Dr. Thompson had created a situation that would prove far more dangerous than anything Diana's gentle therapy had ever posed. The stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge everything the hospital administration thought they knew about patient care, professional boundaries, and the true meaning of healing. Diana Rodriguez might have been silenced, but the impact of her work was about to speak louder than anyone could have imagined. The morning after Diana Rodriguez's termination dawned grey and somber over Riverside General Hospital. The pediatric wing, usually filled with the gentle sounds of recovery and healing, now echoed with the distressed cries of children who had lost their most effective source of comfort. The absence of Diana's calming presence was felt immediately, creating a ripple effect that would soon escalate into a full-scale crisis. Lucy Chen's condition had deteriorated overnight. The 5-year-old, who had finally begun to show signs of improvement under Diana's care, was now experiencing what the medical team classified as severe preoperative anxiety. Her heart rate remained dangerously elevated, her breathing was rapid and shallow, and she had refused all food and medication since Diana's departure. The child's parents, Maria and David Chen, sat helplessly beside their daughter's bed, watching her retreat into a state of panic that seemed to grow more intense with each passing hour. Dr. Thompson made his morning rounds with his usual clinical efficiency, but even his practiced professional demeanor couldn't mask his growing concern about Lucy's deteriorating state. Standard anxiety management protocols had been implemented immediately following Diana's termination, but none of them were producing the desired results. The child life specialist had spent hours attempting to engage Lucy with toys, books, and games, but the little girl remained unresponsive, her wide eyes darting fearfully toward any medical personnel who entered her room. Tommy Williams, the 7-year-old chemotherapy patient, was experiencing similar difficulties. His treatment, which had been proceeding smoothly under Diana's care, was now complicated by severe anticipatory anxiety. The boy had begun experiencing panic attacks at the mere sight of medical equipment, and his parents were questioning whether to continue with his treatment protocol. The oncology team was faced with the difficult reality that their patient's psychological distress was now interfering with his cancer treatment, potentially compromising his chances of recovery. Word of the deteriorating conditions in the pediatric wing spread quickly through the hospital's nursing staff. Many of the nurses had witnessed Diana's success with anxious children and were frustrated by the administration's decision to terminate her employment. Amanda Foster found herself fielding complaints and concerns from her nursing team, all of whom were struggling to manage patients who had previously responded well to Diana's unique approach. The situation became more complicated when other departments began experiencing similar challenges. The emergency department reported increased difficulty managing pediatric patients who required procedures, and the outpatient surgery center was seeing higher rates of last-minute cancellations due to children's inability to cope with preoperative anxiety. The hospital's reputation for excellent pediatric care, built over decades of dedicated service, was beginning to suffer as word spread through the community about the increased distress experienced by young patients. Dr. Thompson, however, remained steadfast in his position. During a heated meeting with the nursing administration, he defended his decision to terminate Diana, arguing that maintaining professional standards was more important than short-term patient comfort. He insisted that the children would adapt to conventional anxiety management techniques and that allowing unregulated therapeutic practices would set a dangerous precedent for the entire medical facility. Amanda Foster attempted to present alternative solutions, suggesting that Diana's methods could be formally evaluated and potentially incorporated into standard protocols if they proved scientifically sound. She had compiled data showing significant improvements in patient outcomes during Diana's tenure, including reduced medication requirements, shorter hospital stays, and higher patient satisfaction scores. Dr. Thompson dismissed these findings, attributing them to coincidence rather than the effectiveness of ASMR therapy. The tension escalated when Lucy Chen's parents requested a meeting with hospital administration. Maria Chen, a soft-spoken woman who rarely challenged authority, surprised everyone with her passionate advocacy for her daughter's needs. She detailed the dramatic improvement Lucy had experienced under Diana's care and demanded an explanation for why effective treatment had been discontinued. David Chen, a local business owner with connections throughout the Austin community, threatened to transfer his daughter to another facility if her anxiety could not be managed effectively. Dr. Thompson's response to the Chen family's concerns was clinically correct, but emotionally tone-deaf. He explained the hospital's position on evidence-based medicine and assured them that Lucy would receive the highest standard of care according to established medical protocols. When Maria Chen asked specifically about the possibility of reinstating Diana's services, Dr. Thompson firmly declined, stating that the hospital could not compromise its professional standards to accommodate unproven therapeutic methods. The confrontation with the Chen family marked a turning point in the hospital's handling of the situation. What had begun as an internal personnel matter was now attracting attention from patients' families and potentially the broader community. David Chen's threat to involve local media added a new dimension to the crisis, transforming it from a medical disagreement into a potential public relations disaster. Meanwhile, Diana Rodriguez was struggling with her own emotional turmoil. The sudden termination of her career had left her feeling lost and questioning everything she had believed about patient advocacy and professional integrity. She spent her days replaying the events that had led to her firing, wondering if she could have handled the situation differently or if there had been some way to gain Dr. Thompson's approval for her methods. The most painful aspect of her termination was knowing that children who had depended on her care were now suffering without the comfort she had been able to provide. Diana had developed deep emotional connections with many of her patients, and the knowledge that Lucy Chen was facing surgery without the anxiety management that had proven so effective was almost unbearable. She found herself driving past the hospital repeatedly, hoping for some sign that the children were coping better than she feared. Diana's situation was complicated by the fact that her termination had been classified as dismissal for cause, making it difficult for her to find employment at other medical facilities. The nursing community in Austin was relatively small, and word of her firing had spread quickly through professional networks. Potential employers were reluctant to hire someone who had been terminated for practicing outside the scope of nursing responsibilities, regardless of the positive outcomes she had achieved. Back at Riverside General, the situation continued to deteriorate. Lucy Chen's surgery had to be postponed twice due to her inability to maintain stable vital signs in the preoperative period. The delay was creating additional medical risks and emotional trauma for both the child and her family. Tommy Williams had missed 2 chemotherapy sessions due to his severe anxiety, prompting his oncologist to consider alternative treatment locations that might be better equipped to handle his psychological needs. The nursing staff was becoming increasingly vocal about their concerns. Several experienced pediatric nurses had submitted formal complaints about the working conditions in the children's ward, citing increased stress levels and their inability to provide adequate comfort. To distressed patients, Amanda Foster was faced with the possibility of additional resignations if the situation could not be resolved quickly. Dr. Thompson found himself under increasing pressure from multiple directions. Hospital administrators were beginning to question his handling of the Diana Rodriguez situation, particularly as patient satisfaction scores plummeted and families began expressing dissatisfaction with their children's care. The medical staff was divided, with some supporting his position on professional standards, while others argued that patient outcomes should be the primary consideration in evaluating therapeutic interventions. The breaking point came when Lucy Chen experienced what appeared to be a cardiac episode during a routine preoperative assessment. The 5-year-old's heart rate spiked dangerously high, and she began showing signs of severe distress that required immediate medical intervention. While the episode was ultimately determined to be anxiety-related rather than a complication of her underlying heart condition, it served as a stark reminder of the very real medical consequences of unmanaged psychological distress. Maria Chen's reaction to her daughter's crisis was swift and decisive. She demanded an immediate meeting with the hospital's chief executive officer, bypassing Dr. Thompson entirely and escalating the situation to the highest level of hospital administration. Her request was accompanied by a formal complaint about the standard of care her daughter was receiving and a threat to pursue legal action if Lucy's condition continued to deteriorate due to inadequate anxiety management. The hospital's legal department became involved for the first time, reviewing the circumstances surrounding Diana's termination and evaluating the potential liability associated with the current crisis in pediatric care. Their preliminary assessment was troubling, suggesting that the hospital could face significant legal exposure if patient care continued to deteriorate as a direct result of administrative decisions. Dr. Thompson's authority was further undermined when several department heads began questioning his judgment privately. The chief of surgery expressed concerns about the impact of increased pediatric anxiety on surgical outcomes, while the emergency department chief reported growing difficulties managing child patients who required urgent procedures. The consensus among medical leadership was beginning to shift toward the view that patient welfare should take precedence over rigid adherence to conventional protocols. As word of the crisis spread beyond the hospital walls, Diana Rodriguez received an unexpected phone call from James Patterson, the hospital's chief executive officer. The conversation was brief and cryptic, but it suggested that the situation at Riverside General had reached a level that required immediate and decisive action. Diana was asked to remain available for a possible meeting the following day, though no details were provided about the purpose or nature of the discussion. The stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge fundamental assumptions about medical practice, professional authority, and the balance between institutional policies and patient needs. The escalating tension had reached a point where something had to give, and the decision made in the coming hours would determine not only Diana Rodriguez's future, but the direction of pediatric care at Riverside General Hospital for years to come. The next morning arrived with an unusual stillness in the corridors of Riverside General Hospital. James Patterson, the chief executive officer, had arrived earlier than his customary time, his black sedan pulling into the executive parking area. As the first rays of sunlight touched the hospital's glass facade, at 58, Patterson was known throughout the Austin medical community as a leader who balanced compassionate patient care with sound business practices. His 23-year tenure at Riverside General had been marked by steady growth, innovation, and an unwavering commitment to excellence in healthcare delivery. Patterson's decision to personally investigate the pediatric crisis had been prompted by a sleepless night spent reviewing incident reports, patient satisfaction data, and legal assessments. The preliminary findings painted a troubling picture of declining care quality that threatened not only individual patients, but the hospital's reputation as a leading pediatric facility. More importantly, the human cost of the current situation weighed heavily on his conscience as both a healthcare administrator and a grandfather of 3 young children. His first stop was the pediatric wing, where he conducted an unannounced walkthrough to assess conditions firsthand. The scene that greeted him was unlike anything he had witnessed in his decades of hospital administration. The usually vibrant children's ward felt heavy with tension and distress. Crying echoed from multiple rooms, anxious parents clustered in hallways discussing their concerns, and nursing staff moved with the hurried efficiency of professionals. Overwhelmed by circumstances beyond their control, Patterson's arrival in Lucy Chen's room coincided with another episode of severe anxiety. The 5-year-old was experiencing rapid breathing and elevated heart rate, while her parents attempted to comfort her with limited success. The medical team present included Dr. Thompson, 2 pediatric nurses, and a child life specialist, all working to implement standard anxiety management protocols that were clearly failing to address Lucy's needs. What struck Patterson most profoundly was the contrast between the current scene and the reports he had reviewed from Diana Rodriguez's patient files. The data showed consistently positive outcomes, reduced medication requirements, and high satisfaction scores during the period when Diana had been providing care. The difference was stark and undeniable, suggesting that something significant had been lost when Diana's employment was terminated. Patterson observed the medical team's efforts for several minutes without announcing his presence. Dr. Thompson was directing the response with his usual clinical precision, but even his experienced approach could not overcome Lucy's overwhelming fear and distress. The child's parents looked exhausted and desperate, clearly struggling with the helplessness of watching their daughter suffer without effective relief. The CEO's next stop was Tommy Williams's room, where he encountered a similar scene of distress and ineffective intervention. The 7-year-old chemotherapy patient was scheduled for treatment that morning, but his anxiety levels were so severe that the procedure had already been delayed twice. Tommy's parents were discussing the possibility of seeking treatment at another facility, a conversation that highlighted the very real risk of patient loss due to the current crisis. Patterson's investigation continued with private meetings with key nursing staff members. Amanda Foster provided a detailed account of the deteriorating conditions in pediatric care, supported by objective data showing increased medication usage, longer hospital stays, and declining patient satisfaction scores. Several experienced pediatric nurses corroborated these findings, describing their frustration with their inability to provide adequate comfort to distressed children. The most compelling testimony came from nurses who had worked directly with Diana Rodriguez and witnessed her success with challenging cases. They described her ASMR techniques in clinical terms, explaining how gentle touch, rhythmic sounds, and carefully modulated vocal tones had produced measurable physiological responses in anxious children. Their accounts suggested that Diana's methods were not merely alternative therapy, but represented a sophisticated understanding of pediatric psychology and neurological responses to sensory stimuli. Patterson's review of Diana's personnel file revealed an exemplary record of professional service spanning 8 years. Her performance evaluations were consistently outstanding, patient satisfaction scores were above department averages, and she had received multiple commendations for exceptional patient care. The contrast between this record and the circumstances of her termination raised serious questions about the decision-making process that had led to her dismissal. The turning point in Patterson's investigation came during his meeting with Maria and David Chen. The couple had requested the session to discuss their concerns about Lucy's care and to explore options for ensuring their daughter's successful treatment. Their account of Diana's impact on Lucy's condition was both detailed and compelling, describing a transformation from severe distress to calm cooperation that had enabled medical procedures to proceed smoothly. David Chen, speaking as both a concerned parent and a prominent business leader in the Austin community, made it clear that the current situation was unacceptable. He detailed his daughter's deteriorating condition since Diana's departure and expressed his intention to seek care elsewhere if effective anxiety management could not be restored. His threat to involve local media and pursue legal action added urgency to Patterson's need for a swift resolution. Maria Chen's testimony was even more powerful in its quiet desperation. She described watching her daughter retreat into fear and panic, losing the progress that had given their family hope for a successful surgical outcome. Her plea for Diana's reinstatement was not merely an emotional appeal, but a practical request based on observed results and her daughter's clear need for the specialized care Diana had provided. Patterson's conversation with the hospital's legal counsel provided additional context for the gravity of the situation. The potential liability associated with deteriorating patient care was substantial, particularly if families began seeking treatment elsewhere or pursuing legal action based on inadequate anxiety management. The legal department's assessment suggested that the hospital's exposure to litigation was actually greater under current conditions than it would have been if Diana's unconventional methods had been formally evaluated and approved. The CEO's investigation culminated in a comprehensive review of ASMR therapy research and its potential applications in pediatric healthcare. The scientific literature revealed a growing body of evidence supporting the use of sensory-based interventions for anxiety management, particularly in children who had not responded well to traditional approaches. Several major medical centers had begun incorporating similar techniques into their standard protocols, suggesting that Diana's methods were actually at the forefront of emerging best practices, rather than outside the bounds of accepted medical care. Armed with this information, Patterson made the decision to personally intervene in the crisis. His first action was to schedule an immediate meeting with Dr. Thompson to discuss the situation and explore options for resolution. The conversation would prove to be one of the most challenging of Patterson's administrative career, requiring him to balance respect for medical authority with his responsibility for overall hospital operations and patient welfare. Dr. Thompson's initial response to Patterson's concerns was defensive and rigid. He maintained his position that Diana's termination had been necessary to preserve professional standards and prevent the hospital from sanctioning unproven therapeutic methods. His argument focused on the importance of evidence-based medicine and the potential risks of allowing nursing staff to practice outside their defined scope of responsibilities. Patterson's response was measured but firm. He presented the data showing declining patient outcomes since Diana's departure, highlighting the very real medical and legal consequences of the current situation. He challenged Dr. Thompson's characterization of ASMR therapy as unproven, citing recent research and the growing acceptance of sensory-based interventions in pediatric care. Most importantly, he emphasized the hospital's fundamental obligation to provide the most effective care possible for its young patients. The conversation revealed a fundamental philosophical difference between the two leaders. Dr. Thompson's focus on maintaining rigid professional boundaries reflected his traditional medical training and genuine concern for patient safety. Patterson's emphasis on patient outcomes and innovative care approaches reflected his broader perspective as a healthcare administrator responsible for the institution's overall mission and community trust. The breakthrough came when Patterson proposed a compromise that would address both sets of concerns. Rather than simply reinstating Diana without conditions, he suggested implementing a formal evaluation process that would assess the effectiveness and safety of ASMR techniques under controlled conditions. This approach would satisfy Dr. Thompson's concerns about evidence-based practice while allowing the hospital to explore innovative treatments that could benefit pediatric patients. Patterson's proposal included several key components designed to ensure both patient safety and professional accountability. Diana would be reinstated on a provisional basis, working under direct supervision while her methods were formally evaluated. A multidisciplinary team, including physicians, nurses, psychologists, and researchers, would assess the effectiveness of ASMR therapy and develop protocols for its appropriate use. Patient outcomes would be carefully monitored and documented to build a scientific foundation for future implementation. The most crucial element of Patterson's plan was the immediate focus on Lucy Chen's case. With her surgery still pending and her condition continuing to deteriorate, there was an urgent need for effective intervention. Patterson proposed that Diana be allowed to work with Lucy under close medical supervision, with her techniques carefully observed and documented by the evaluation team. This approach would provide immediate relief for a child in distress while generating data about the effectiveness of ASMR therapy in clinical settings. Dr. Thompson's resistance to the proposal was significant but not absolute. His primary concern was maintaining his authority over medical decisions in the pediatric department, and he worried that reinstating Diana would undermine his credibility with other staff members. Patterson addressed these concerns by emphasizing that the evaluation process would be conducted with full medical oversight and that any permanent changes to treatment protocols would require Dr. Thompson's approval. The negotiation continued for over an hour, with both men recognizing the high stakes involved in their decision. Patient welfare, professional reputations, hospital operations, and community trust all hung in the balance. Patterson's persistence and willingness to find middle ground eventually wore down Dr. Thompson's opposition, leading to a reluctant agreement to implement the proposed evaluation process. The decision to contact Diana Rodriguez was made immediately following the resolution with Dr. Thompson. Patterson personally placed the call, explaining the situation and inviting her to return to the hospital for a meeting about her potential reinstatement. Diana's response was a mixture of surprise, hope, and cautious skepticism, reflecting her emotional trauma from the recent termination and her uncertainty about the hospital's true commitment to change. As word of the potential resolution spread through the pediatric wing, the atmosphere began to shift subtly. Nursing staff who had been struggling with difficult cases since Diana's departure expressed cautious optimism about the possibility of her return. Parents of affected children, particularly the Chen family, received the news with relief and renewed hope for their children's successful treatment. The stage was set for Diana Rodriguez's return to Riverside General Hospital under circumstances that would test not only her clinical skills, but her ability to work within a framework of scientific evaluation and medical oversight. The revolution in pediatric anxiety management was about to begin, driven by the convergence of patient need, administrative leadership, and a willingness to challenge conventional approaches to medical care. Diana Rodriguez stood outside the familiar glass doors of Riverside General Hospital, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension that she hadn't felt since her first day as a new graduate nurse. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot where she had walked in defeat just days earlier, carrying a cardboard box filled with the remnants of her 8-year career. Today she returned with empty hands, but a spirit cautiously renewed by the possibility of redemption and the chance to once again provide comfort to children who desperately needed her care. James Patterson met Diana personally in the hospital's main lobby, a gesture that spoke volumes about the significance of her return and the administration's commitment to resolving the crisis that had engulfed the pediatric wing. His warm handshake and genuine smile provided reassurance that this meeting represented more than just damage control. It was an opportunity for genuine healing and professional growth that could benefit everyone involved. The walk to the pediatric wing felt both familiar and foreign to Diana. The corridors she had traversed thousands of times during her career now seemed charged with new meaning and possibility. Nursing staff members who passed them in the hallways offered tentative smiles and nods of encouragement, their expressions reflecting the hope that Diana's return might restore some measure of calm to their increasingly chaotic work environment. Patterson had arranged for Diana's first patient interaction to be with Lucy Chen, whose deteriorating condition had become the focal point of the hospital's efforts to address the pediatric anxiety crisis. The 5-year-old's surgery had been postponed multiple times due to her inability to maintain stable vital signs in the preoperative period, and her parents had grown increasingly desperate as traditional anxiety management techniques continued to fail. As they approached Lucy's room, Diana could hear the familiar sounds of a child in severe distress. Lucy's crying was punctuated by rapid, shallow breathing that indicated a level of panic that could quickly escalate into a medical emergency. The sound transported Diana back to countless similar situations she had encountered throughout her career, reminding her of both the challenges and the profound satisfaction that came with pediatric nursing. Dr. Thompson was present in Lucy's room when Diana and Patterson arrived, his expression reflecting a complex mixture of professional skepticism and grudging hope. The pediatric team had been working with Lucy for over an hour without success, implementing every conventional anxiety management technique in their repertoire. The child's parents stood helplessly beside her bed, their faces etched with the exhaustion and desperation that comes from watching a beloved child suffer without being able to provide relief. Patterson's introduction of Diana to the assembled medical team was carefully crafted to establish her credibility while acknowledging the experimental nature of her return. He explained the evaluation framework that had been established to assess the effectiveness of ASMR therapy and emphasized that Diana's work would be closely monitored and documented by the multidisciplinary team. His words carried the weight of administrative authority while leaving room for medical professionals to form their own judgments about the interventions they were about to witness. Diana's approach to Lucy's bedside was deliberate and unhurried, reflecting her understanding that trust and comfort could not be rushed, particularly with a child who had experienced multiple failed attempts at anxiety relief. She began by simply sitting quietly beside Lucy's bed, allowing her presence to become familiar before attempting any direct intervention. Her calm demeanor and gentle energy seemed to create a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. Though Lucy's distress remained evident, the transformation began slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. Diana's voice, when she finally spoke, was barely above a whisper, carrying the same gentle cadence that had provided comfort to countless children throughout her career. She began with simple, rhythmic breathing instructions, encouraging Lucy to match her own slow, steady respirations. The technique was basic but fundamental, establishing a foundation of physiological calm that would support more advanced interventions. As Lucy's breathing began to stabilize slightly, Diana introduced the first elements of her ASMR approach. From her small leather bag, she withdrew a soft bristled brush that she had used successfully with dozens of anxious children. Her movements were slow and deliberate, allowing Lucy to observe and anticipate each action rather than being surprised by sudden changes in her environment. The gentle brushing motion that Diana applied to Lucy's arm was accompanied by quiet, rhythmic vocalizations that seemed to activate something deep in the child's nervous system. Lucy's crying gradually subsided, replaced by a watchful alertness that suggested she was beginning to respond to the sensory input Diana was providing. The change was subtle, but unmistakable to those who had been struggling unsuccessfully to calm the child for hours. Dr. Thompson watched the intervention with intense scrutiny, his clinical training compelling him to look for objective signs of improvement, while his skepticism made him wary of attributing too much significance to what might be temporary changes in Lucy's behavior. However, the physiological monitoring equipment provided undeniable evidence of the intervention's effectiveness. Lucy's heart rate, which had been elevated for days, began to show a steady downward trend. Her breathing became deeper and more regular, and the tension in her small body visibly decreased. Maria Chen was the first to recognize the magnitude of what was happening. As a mother who had spent countless hours watching her daughter struggle with overwhelming fear, she could see changes that went beyond simple behavioral modification. Lucy's eyes, which had been wide with panic for days, began to show a calmness that her parents had feared they might never see again. The rigid posture that had characterized Lucy's response to medical environments began to soften as Diana's gentle interventions continued. The most remarkable moment came when Lucy voluntarily extended her free arm toward Diana, a gesture that indicated not just tolerance, but active participation in the therapeutic process. This was the breakthrough that Diana had been working toward, the point at which a frightened child chose to trust rather than resist, to engage rather than withdraw. The significance of this moment was not lost on the medical team observing the interaction, particularly Dr. Thompson, whose expression had shifted from skepticism to grudging interest. Diana's work with Lucy continued for nearly an hour. Gradually, introducing additional ASMR elements as the child's comfort level increased. Gentle tapping patterns, soft fabric textures, and carefully modulated vocal tones created a multi-sensory experience that seemed to activate the child's natural relaxation response. The transformation was so complete that Lucy actually fell asleep during the session, something that had not occurred naturally since her admission to the hospital. The impact of Diana's successful intervention with Lucy extended far beyond the immediate relief provided to one child and her family. Word of the dramatic change in Lucy's condition spread quickly through the pediatric wing, generating excitement and hope among nursing staff who had been struggling with similar cases since Diana's departure. Parents of other anxious children began requesting that Diana work with their sons and daughters, creating a demand that would soon test the hospital's commitment to expanding access to her specialized care. Tommy Williams became Diana's second patient of the day, and his response to ASMR therapy was equally dramatic. The 7-year-old chemotherapy patient had missed multiple treatment sessions due to severe anticipatory anxiety, but under Diana's care, he was able to complete a full chemotherapy infusion with minimal distress. His parents, who had been considering transferring his care to another facility, cancelled those plans and expressed their gratitude for the restoration of effective anxiety management. Patterson's decision to observe Diana's work firsthand provided him with powerful evidence of the therapeutic approach's effectiveness and safety. He watched as child after child responded positively to interventions that required no medication, no restraints, and no invasive procedures. The contrast with traditional anxiety management approaches was striking, particularly in terms of the children's active participation in their own care and the reduction in trauma associated with medical procedures. Dr. Thompson's evaluation of Diana's work was more complex and conflicted. His medical training and professional experience made it difficult for him to accept that such simple interventions could produce such dramatic results. However, the objective evidence was undeniable, and his commitment to patient welfare ultimately outweighed his resistance to unconventional approaches. His observation notes, which would become part of the formal evaluation process, documented significant improvements in patient outcomes with no adverse effects. The emotional climax of Diana's return came during her reunion with the nursing staff who had supported her throughout her career. Amanda Foster's welcome was particularly meaningful, as she had fought behind the scenes to advocate for Diana's reinstatement while maintaining her own professional responsibilities. The embrace between the two experienced nurses represented not just personal reconciliation, but professional validation of approaches to patient care that prioritized compassion and innovation. The day concluded with a meeting between Diana, Patterson, and the evaluation team to discuss next steps in the formal assessment process. The preliminary results were overwhelmingly positive, but everyone recognized that sustained success would require careful documentation, protocol development, and ongoing training for other nursing staff members who wanted to incorporate ASMR techniques into their practice. Lucy Chen's successful completion of her heart surgery the following day provided the ultimate vindication of Diana's approach. The 5-year-old, who had been too anxious to tolerate pre-operative procedures just days earlier, sailed through the entire surgical process with minimal anxiety and rapid recovery. Her parents' gratitude was profound and genuine, extending beyond appreciation for medical skill to recognition of the healing power of human compassion and innovative care. The transformation in the pediatric wing was immediate and sustained. Children who had been struggling with medical anxiety began responding positively to care. Families reported increased satisfaction with their hospital experience, and nursing staff regained their sense of professional fulfillment. The crisis that had threatened to undermine the hospital's reputation for pediatric excellence was not only resolved, but transformed into an opportunity for innovation and growth. Diana Rodriguez's vindication was complete, not because she had been proven right in a professional dispute, but because children were receiving better care and families were finding hope in circumstances that had previously seemed hopeless. The gentle touch and innovative spirit that had made her an exceptional nurse were now recognized as valuable assets to be developed and shared rather than suppressed and silenced. 3 months after Diana Rodriguez's reinstatement, Riverside General Hospital had become an unlikely center of innovation in pediatric anxiety management. The transformation that began with one nurse's compassionate approach to patient care had evolved into a comprehensive program that was attracting attention from medical professionals across the country. James Patterson found himself fielding calls from hospital administrators, researchers, and media outlets eager to learn about the revolutionary approach to pediatric care that was producing remarkable results in Austin, Texas. The formal evaluation of Diana's ASMR therapy techniques had exceeded everyone's expectations. The multidisciplinary team assembled to assess the program had documented consistent improvements in patient outcomes across multiple metrics. Children receiving ASMR-based anxiety management showed significantly reduced medication requirements, shorter hospital stays, improved cooperation with medical procedures, and higher satisfaction scores from both patients and families. Perhaps most importantly, the techniques proved to be completely safe, with no adverse effects reported during the evaluation period. Dr. Thompson's transformation had been perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the entire experience. The physician, who had once viewed Diana's methods as unprofessional and potentially dangerous, had become one of the program's most enthusiastic supporters. His conversion was based on objective evidence rather than sentiment, as he witnessed firsthand the superior outcomes achieved through ASMR intervention compared to traditional anxiety management approaches. His endorsement carried particular weight within the medical community, helping to overcome skepticism from other physicians who might have dismissed the techniques as alternative medicine. The success of the program had led to the establishment of a formal pediatric comfort care program at Riverside General, with Diana serving as its director and primary trainer. The hospital had invested in specialized equipment, dedicated space, and additional staff training to expand access to ASMR therapy throughout the pediatric department. What had begun as one nurse's innovative approach to patient care had evolved into a systematic program that was changing the standard of care for anxious children. Diana's role had expanded far beyond direct patient care to include training other nursing staff, developing treatment protocols, and participating in research, studies that would contribute to the scientific understanding of ASMR therapy in healthcare settings. Her work was being documented and published in professional journals, and she had been invited to speak at conferences around the country about the integration of sensory-based interventions into pediatric nursing practice. The impact on individual patients and families had been profound and lasting. Lucy Chen, now fully recovered from her heart surgery, had become something of a poster child for the program's success. Her parents frequently brought her back to visit Diana and the pediatric staff, and Lucy's comfortable interactions with medical personnel stood in stark contrast to the terrified child who had once required postponement of surgery due to severe anxiety. The Chen family had become advocates for the program, sharing their story with other families and supporting efforts to expand access to ASMR therapy. Tommy Williams had completed his chemotherapy treatment successfully, with his final sessions proceeding so smoothly that his parents were able to participate actively in his care, rather than struggling to manage his anxiety. The 7-year-old's positive association with medical care had implications that extended far beyond his current treatment, potentially influencing his healthcare experiences for the rest of his life. His oncologist had incorporated information about the pediatric comfort care program into treatment discussions with other families, helping to spread awareness of the available services. The program's success had attracted the attention of researchers from the University of Texas Health Science Center, leading to a formal partnership to study the neurological mechanisms underlying ASMR responses in children. The collaboration was generating new insights into pediatric psychology and potentially advancing the scientific understanding of sensory-based therapeutic interventions. Diana found herself working alongside neuroscientists and psychologists, contributing her clinical expertise to research that could benefit children far beyond the walls of Riverside General Hospital. Amanda Foster had been promoted to oversee the expansion of comfort care programs throughout the hospital system, with plans to extend ASMR-based interventions to adult patients and other clinical areas where anxiety management was challenging. Her leadership had been instrumental in ensuring that the program's growth maintained the high standards of patient care and professional excellence that had characterized its initial success. The nursing department's reputation had been enhanced rather than damaged by the integration of innovative therapeutic approaches. The financial impact of the program had been unexpectedly positive for the hospital. Despite initial concerns about the costs associated with training staff and implementing new protocols, the pediatric comfort care program had actually reduced overall expenses by decreasing medication usage, shortening hospital stays, and reducing the need for additional interventions to manage anxious children. Insurance companies had begun to take notice of the superior outcomes and cost-effectiveness, leading to discussions about coverage for ASMR therapy in pediatric settings. Patterson's leadership during the crisis had elevated his reputation within the healthcare community and positioned Riverside General as a forward-thinking institution willing to embrace innovation when it served patient needs. His decision to prioritize patient outcomes over rigid adherence to conventional protocols had proven to be not only ethically correct, but strategically advantageous for the hospital's competitive position in the Austin market. The story of Diana Rodriguez and the ASMR therapy program had attracted national media attention, leading to features in healthcare publications and general interest magazines. The coverage had brought positive publicity to Riverside General, while raising awareness about the potential benefits of sensory-based interventions in medical settings. Diana had been invited to appear on television programs and podcasts, sharing her story and educating the public about the importance of compassionate, innovative patient care. On a quiet Thursday evening, 6 months after her reinstatement, Diana stood in the same spot where she had been confronted by security guards during Lucy Chen's initial hospitalization. The pediatric wing bore little resemblance to the tense, distressed environment that had characterized the period following her termination. Children's laughter echoed through the corridors, parents appeared relaxed and confident in their children's care, and nursing staff moved with the assured efficiency of professionals who felt empowered to provide the best possible care. Lucy Chen was visiting the hospital that evening for a routine follow-up appointment, and she had asked specifically to see Diana. The 5-year-old's comfort with the medical environment was remarkable, particularly given her history of severe anxiety. She chatted easily with nursing staff, showed interest in the medical equipment, and demonstrated none of the fear that had once made her care so challenging. Her transformation symbolized the broader changes that had occurred throughout the pediatric department. Diana's reflection on the journey from termination to triumph was tempered by awareness of how easily things could have gone differently. If James Patterson had not been willing to challenge conventional thinking, if Dr. Thompson had not been open to evidence that contradicted his initial assumptions, if the hospital administration had prioritized liability concerns over patient welfare, the story could have ended with continued suffering for vulnerable children and professional destruction for a dedicated nurse. The lesson that emerged from Diana's experience extended far beyond the specific benefits of ASMR therapy to encompass broader principles about healthcare innovation, professional courage, and institutional leadership. Her willingness to advocate for her patients, despite professional risk, had ultimately led to improvements in care that benefited countless children. The hospital's eventual embrace of her methods had demonstrated that institutions could change and grow when presented with compelling evidence of better outcomes. As Diana prepared to leave the hospital that evening, she encountered Dr. Thompson in the corridor outside Lucy's room. Their relationship had evolved from adversarial to collaborative, based on mutual respect for each other's expertise and shared commitment to excellence in patient care. His acknowledgement of the program's success and his gratitude for her persistence had been both gracious and genuine. Their conversation that evening reflected a professional partnership that had emerged from initial conflict to create something valuable for the entire medical community. The establishment of Diana's program had attracted visitors from hospitals across Texas and beyond, eager to learn about the integration of ASMR therapy into standard pediatric protocols. These professional exchanges had led to the development of training materials, certification programs, and research collaborations that were spreading the benefits of sensory-based anxiety management to medical facilities throughout the region. Diana found herself at the center of a movement that was transforming pediatric care on a scale she had never imagined possible. Tommy Williams and his family had become regular participants in hospital events and fundraising activities, sharing their story with other families facing pediatric cancer diagnoses. Tommy's positive attitude toward medical procedures and his comfort with healthcare environments had made him an inspiration to other children undergoing treatment. His parents frequently spoke about the difference that Diana's care had made, not just in his treatment outcomes, but in his overall relationship with medical care that would benefit him throughout his life. The scientific validation of ASMR therapy through rigorous research had been crucial to the program's acceptance within the broader medical community. The data collected at Riverside General had contributed to several peer-reviewed publications that were establishing the theoretical foundation for sensory-based interventions in healthcare settings. Diana's clinical observations had proven invaluable to researchers seeking to understand the mechanisms underlying the therapeutic effects she had observed in her daily practice. The program's success had also influenced medical education, with several nursing schools incorporating information about ASMR therapy and sensory-based interventions into their curricula. Diana had been invited to guest lecture at these institutions, sharing her experiences and encouraging the next generation of nurses to think creatively about patient care approaches. Her story had become a case study in professional advocacy and the importance of evidence-based innovation in healthcare. Maria and David Chen had established a small foundation to support research into pediatric anxiety management, inspired by their daughter's transformation under Diana's care. The foundation provided funding for training programs, research initiatives, and equipment purchases that helped other hospitals implement similar comfort care programs. Their philanthropy had created a lasting legacy that extended the impact of Diana's work far beyond the walls of Riverside General Hospital. The transformation of the hospital's culture had been as significant as the clinical improvements achieved through the ASMR program. Staff members throughout the institution had embraced a more innovative and patient-centered approach to care, encouraged by the administration's support for evidence-based experimentation. The success of Diana's program had created an environment where other healthcare professionals felt empowered to propose and test new approaches to patient care challenges. James Patterson's leadership during the crisis had established him as a respected voice in healthcare administration, frequently invited to speak at conferences about managing innovation and change in medical institutions. His decision-making process during Diana's reinstatement had become a case study in healthcare leadership programs, demonstrating how institutional leaders could balance competing priorities while maintaining focus on patient welfare and organizational mission. The legal implications of the hospital's experience had been carefully documented and analyzed, providing guidance for other healthcare institutions facing similar challenges related to innovative therapeutic approaches. The legal department's assessment had shown that supporting evidence-based innovation actually reduced rather than increased institutional liability, particularly when proper evaluation and documentation procedures were followed. Dr. Thompson's evolution from skeptic to advocate had made him a powerful spokesperson for the integration of innovative approaches into traditional medical practice. His presentations at medical conferences carried particular credibility because of his initial resistance and subsequent conversion based on objective evidence. His advocacy helped overcome resistance from other physicians who might have dismissed ASMR therapy as outside the bounds of serious medical practice. The program's impact on nursing retention and job satisfaction had been an unexpected but significant benefit for the hospital. Nurses working in the pediatric department reported higher levels of professional fulfillment and were more likely to remain in their positions long-term. The program had attracted experienced pediatric nurses from other institutions, enhancing the overall quality of nursing care and the hospital's reputation as an employer of choice for healthcare professionals. Diana's personal journey from termination to professional triumph had been emotionally challenging but ultimately transformative. The experience had deepened her understanding of healthcare systems, professional advocacy, and the importance of persistence in the face of institutional resistance. Her confidence in her clinical judgment had been validated, but she had also learned valuable lessons about collaboration, communication, and the importance of building support for innovative approaches within existing institutional structures. The expansion of comfort care services beyond the pediatric department had been a natural evolution of the program's success. Adult patients undergoing anxiety-provoking procedures had begun requesting access to ASMR-based interventions, leading to pilot programs in surgical preparation areas, emergency departments, and intensive care units. The principles underlying pediatric comfort care were proving applicable across age groups and clinical settings. International interest in the program had led to collaboration with healthcare institutions in other countries, creating opportunities for cross-cultural research and knowledge exchange. Diana had been invited to present her work at international conferences, contributing to global conversations about innovative approaches to patient care and anxiety management. The techniques developed at Riverside General were being adapted and implemented in diverse healthcare systems around the world. The program's influence on healthcare policy had been gradual but significant. Professional nursing organizations had begun developing guidelines for the use of sensory-based interventions in clinical practice, drawing heavily on the protocols and research developed at Riverside General. Insurance companies were beginning to recognize and reimburse for ASMR therapy in appropriate clinical contexts, removing financial barriers to access for patients who could benefit from these interventions. Lucy Chen's continued involvement with the hospital had evolved into a meaningful relationship that extended far beyond her original patient experience. Now 8 years old and thriving, she had participated in research studies, spoken at fundraising events, and served as an informal ambassador for the Comfort Care program. Her articulate descriptions of how Diana's care had helped her overcome her fears had been powerful testimonials that influenced policymakers, insurance companies, and other healthcare institutions. The mentorship relationships that had developed between Diana and other nursing professionals had created a network of practitioners trained in ASMR techniques who were implementing similar programs at their own institutions. This organic spread of knowledge and expertise had amplified the impact of Diana's work far beyond what could have been achieved through formal dissemination channels alone. The personal connections and professional relationships built through the program had created a lasting community of practice dedicated to innovative patient care. Amanda Foster's expanded role in comfort care programming had led to the development of standardized training modules, certification processes, and quality assurance protocols that could be replicated at other healthcare institutions. Her administrative expertise had been crucial in creating sustainable systems that could maintain the high standards of care established during the program's initial implementation, while allowing for growth and adaptation to different clinical environments. The research partnerships established through the program had generated substantial external funding for continued study of sensory-based interventions in healthcare settings. Grant awards from federal agencies, private foundations, and pharmaceutical companies had supported expanded research efforts that were contributing to the scientific understanding of anxiety management, pediatric psychology, and innovative therapeutic approaches. This research was establishing the evidence base needed for broader adoption of ASMR therapy in medical settings. The program's success had also influenced healthcare architecture and design, with new construction and renovation projects incorporating spaces specifically designed for comfort care interventions. The physical environment had been recognized as an important component of therapeutic effectiveness, leading to the creation of specially designed rooms with optimal acoustics, lighting, and sensory features that enhanced the effectiveness of ASMR-based interventions. The technological innovations that had emerged from the program included specialized equipment for delivering consistent sensory stimuli, monitoring devices that could track physiological responses to interventions, and mobile applications that could extend the benefits of ASMR therapy to home settings. These technological advances were making comfort care techniques more accessible and standardized, while maintaining the personal touch that was essential to their effectiveness. The cultural shift within the hospital had extended beyond clinical practice to influence research priorities, staff development programs, and community outreach initiatives. The institution had embraced a culture of innovation and evidence-based experimentation that was attracting talented healthcare professionals and positioning it as a leader in patient-centered care. The success of Diana's program had demonstrated that institutional support for innovation could yield significant benefits for patients, staff, and the organization as a whole. Tommy Williams had grown into a confident 10-year-old whose positive relationship with healthcare had influenced his entire family's approach to medical care. His younger sister had recently required surgery, and the family's comfort with medical environments and procedures had made her experience much less traumatic than it might have been otherwise. The intergenerational impact of effective anxiety management was becoming apparent as families who had experienced comfort care developed lasting positive associations with healthcare. The economic analysis of the program had demonstrated substantial cost savings for the hospital system, primarily through reduced medication usage, shorter hospital stays, and decreased need for additional interventions to manage patient anxiety. These financial benefits had supported continued investment in program expansion and had provided a compelling business case for other institutions considering similar initiatives. The demonstration that compassionate care could also be cost-effective had been an important factor in gaining administrative support for continued innovation. Diana's recognition within the nursing profession had included numerous awards and honors that acknowledged her contributions to patient care innovation and professional advancement. These accolades had provided platforms for sharing her story and advocating for continued support of innovative approaches to patient care. Her visibility within the profession had made her a role model for other nurses seeking to implement positive changes in their own practice environments. The longitudinal studies that had followed children who received ASMR-based anxiety management had shown lasting benefits that extended well beyond their initial hospital experiences. These children were more likely to cooperate with routine medical care, less likely to develop medical anxiety disorders, and more resilient when facing future health challenges. The long-term impact of effective anxiety management during childhood was proving to have implications for lifelong health and well-being. The program's influence on family dynamics had been profound, with parents reporting increased confidence in their ability to support their children through medical experiences. The techniques that families learned during their hospital stays were being used at home to manage anxiety related to doctor visits, dental procedures, and other healthcare encounters. The empowerment of families to participate actively in anxiety management had created lasting benefits that extended far beyond the hospital setting. Dr. Thompson's collaboration with Diana had evolved into a research partnership that was contributing to the scientific literature on pediatric anxiety management and innovative therapeutic approaches. Their joint publications had helped bridge the gap between traditional medical practice and innovative nursing interventions, demonstrating the value of interdisciplinary collaboration in advancing patient care. Their professional relationship had become a model for how initial conflict could be transformed into productive partnership when both parties remained committed to evidence-based practice and patient welfare. The international recognition that the program had received had positioned Riverside General Hospital as a destination for healthcare professionals seeking training in innovative patient care approaches. The hospital's reputation for excellence in pediatric care had been enhanced by its willingness to embrace and validate new therapeutic techniques. This reputation had attracted patients from across the region and beyond, contributing to the hospital's financial stability and growth. The policy implications of the program's success had extended to healthcare regulation and accreditation standards, with professional organizations beginning to incorporate guidelines for sensory-based interventions into their practice standards. The demonstration that innovative approaches could be implemented safely and effectively within existing regulatory frameworks had encouraged other institutions to explore similar innovations. The program had shown that advancing patient care did not require abandoning established safety protocols, but rather expanding them to encompass new therapeutic modalities. As Diana reflected on the journey that had brought her from professional crisis to national recognition, she remained focused on the fundamental mission that had driven her throughout her nursing career, providing comfort and healing to children in their most vulnerable moments. The institutional changes, research contributions, and professional accolades were meaningful, but they remained secondary to the daily satisfaction of seeing a frightened child find peace and comfort through her care. The legacy of Diana Rodriguez's work extended far beyond any individual patient encounter or professional achievement. She had demonstrated that a single healthcare professional's commitment to innovative, compassionate care could transform entire institutions and influence practice standards across the medical profession. Her story had become a testament to the power of persistence, evidence-based advocacy, and unwavering commitment to patient welfare in creating lasting positive change in healthcare delivery. 5 years had passed since Diana Rodriguez first returned to the pediatric wing of Riverside General Hospital, and the transformation that had begun with her reinstatement had rippled outward in ways that no one could have anticipated. The small leather bag that had once contained her unconventional therapeutic tools had evolved into a comprehensive program that was now studied and replicated in medical facilities across 3 continents. What had started as one nurse's intuitive approach to calming frightened children had become a recognized medical specialty with its own certification requirements, research protocols, and international professional organization. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the newly constructed Diana Rodriguez Center for Pediatric Comfort Care, a state-of-the-art facility that had been built adjacent to the main hospital building. The center represented the culmination of years of growth and validation, providing dedicated space for sensory-based therapeutic interventions, research activities, and training programs that attracted healthcare professionals from around the world. The building itself had been designed with input from Diana and her team, incorporating acoustic engineering, specialized lighting systems, and environmental features that optimized the effectiveness of ASMR-based interventions. Lucy Chen, now 10 years old and a vibrant 5th grader, walked through the center's main corridor with the confident stride of someone completely at ease in medical environments. She had volunteered to participate in the center's community education program, sharing her story with families whose children were facing similar medical challenges. Her transformation from a terrified 5-year-old to a poised young advocate represented the most powerful evidence of the program's lasting impact on children's lives and their relationships with healthcare. The research wing of the center buzzed with activity as international teams of scientists worked to understand the neurological mechanisms underlying ASMR responses and their therapeutic applications. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the center's research director and a neuroscientist from Johns Hopkins University, had relocated to Austin specifically to lead the groundbreaking studies that were emerging from Diana's clinical observations. The collaboration between Diana's practical expertise and Dr. Martinez's research methodology had produced insights that were advancing the scientific understanding of sensory processing, anxiety management, and therapeutic touch. Tommy Williams, now 12 and cancer-free for 4 years, served as a peer mentor in the center's adolescent support program. His journey from a terrified 7-year-old to a confident young man who helped other children navigate their medical experiences embodied the long-term benefits of effective anxiety management during critical developmental periods. His parents had become active supporters of the center's expansion efforts, contributing both financial resources and their time to ensure that other families could access the same quality of care that had made such a difference in their sons' treatment. The training academy within the center had graduated over 300 healthcare professionals in advanced comfort care techniques, creating a network of certified practitioners who were implementing similar programs at their home institutions. Diana had developed a comprehensive curriculum that combined theoretical understanding of sensory processing with hands-on training in therapeutic techniques, ensuring that the quality and safety standards established at Riverside General could be maintained as the program expanded globally. Dr. Thompson had assumed the role of medical director for the center, his complete transformation from skeptic to advocate serving as a powerful example of how evidence-based medicine could embrace innovation when properly validated. His leadership had been crucial in gaining acceptance for the program within conservative medical circles, and his research publications had helped establish the scientific credibility necessary for widespread adoption of ASMR-based interventions in pediatric settings. The center's impact extended far beyond direct patient care to influence healthcare policy, insurance coverage, and medical education standards. Professional nursing organizations had incorporated comfort care training into their continuing education requirements, and several medical schools had added courses on sensory-based therapeutic interventions to their curricula. The demonstration that innovative approaches could improve patient outcomes while reducing costs had captured the attention of healthcare administrators and policymakers who were seeking solutions to the growing challenges of pediatric anxiety and medical trauma. Maria Chen had been appointed to the center's board of directors, bringing her perspective as both a parent and a successful business leader to the governance of the expanding program. Her advocacy had been instrumental in securing funding for research initiatives and capital improvements that allowed the center to maintain its position at the forefront of pediatric comfort care innovation. The foundation that she and her husband had established had grown into a significant source of support for related research and training programs at institutions throughout North America. The International Conference on Pediatric Comfort Care that was held annually at the center had become the premier gathering for healthcare professionals working in sensory-based therapeutic interventions. The conference attracted speakers and attendees from around the world, facilitating knowledge exchange and professional networking that accelerated the global adoption of improved pediatric anxiety management techniques. Diana's keynote presentations at these conferences had become highly anticipated events that inspired healthcare professionals to advocate for innovation and excellence in their own practice environments. Amanda Foster's role had evolved to encompass system-wide implementation of comfort care programs across the entire Riverside Health Network, which had grown to include 12 hospitals and numerous outpatient facilities throughout Central Texas. Her administrative expertise had been crucial in developing standardized protocols, quality assurance systems, and staff development programs that maintained consistent standards of care across all network facilities. The success of the Comfort Care program had contributed to the network's reputation as a leader in patient-centered care, and had attracted talented healthcare professionals who wanted to work in an environment that valued innovation and excellence. The technological innovations that had emerged from the center's research and development efforts had led to the creation of a subsidiary company that manufactured specialized equipment for comfort care applications. The devices developed through this collaboration included precision sound generation systems, biometric monitoring equipment designed specifically for pediatric applications, and mobile platforms that could deliver standardized ASMR interventions in various clinical settings. These technological advances had made comfort care techniques more accessible and consistent while maintaining the personal connection that was essential to their effectiveness. James Patterson had been promoted to Chief Executive Officer of the entire Riverside Health Network, and his leadership during the original crisis had become a case study in healthcare administration programs throughout the country. His decision to support innovation despite institutional resistance had proven to be strategically advantageous for the organization, contributing to significant growth in patient volume, staff retention, and community reputation. The network's Success had attracted attention from healthcare investors and had led to expansion opportunities that might not have been possible without the differentiation provided by the Comfort Care program. The longitudinal research studies that had followed children who received Comfort Care interventions had produced compelling evidence of lasting benefits that extended well into adolescence and young adulthood. These individuals showed significantly lower rates of medical anxiety, greater cooperation with healthcare providers, and more positive attitudes toward health maintenance and disease prevention. The implications of these findings for public health and healthcare costs were substantial, suggesting that effective anxiety management during childhood could yield lifelong benefits for both individuals and society. The center's community outreach programs had expanded to include school-based initiatives that taught children and teachers basic Comfort Care techniques for managing anxiety in educational settings. These programs had shown remarkable success in reducing school-related anxiety and improving academic performance among participating students. The adaptation of ASMR techniques for non-medical applications had opened new avenues for research and application that extended the impact of Diana's work far beyond healthcare settings. The pharmaceutical industry had taken notice of the center's success in reducing medication usage for pediatric anxiety management, leading to collaborative research efforts aimed at understanding the neurochemical mechanisms underlying ASMR responses. Several major pharmaceutical companies had provided funding for research initiatives that could potentially lead to the development of new therapeutic approaches that combined pharmacological and sensory-based interventions for optimal patient outcomes. Diana's personal journey had taken her from bedside nursing to international recognition as a thought leader in pediatric healthcare innovation. Her autobiography, chronicling the path from near termination to global influence, had become a bestseller that inspired healthcare professionals around the world to advocate for evidence-based innovation in patient care. The book's proceeds had been donated to support Comfort Care research and training programs at institutions that served underrepresented populations, extending the benefits of her work to children who might not otherwise have access to advanced therapeutic interventions. The center's influence on healthcare architecture and environmental design had led to the development of new standards for pediatric facility construction that incorporated principles of therapeutic environmental design. The acoustic engineering, lighting systems, and spatial arrangements that had been pioneered at the center were being incorporated into new hospital construction projects around the world, creating healing environments that supported both traditional medical interventions and innovative comfort care approaches. The legal and regulatory framework surrounding comfort care practice had evolved significantly, with professional licensing boards developing specific guidelines for the use of sensory-based interventions in healthcare settings. The careful documentation and evaluation that had characterized the program from its inception had provided the evidence base necessary for regulatory approval and had established precedents that facilitated the adoption of similar programs at other institutions. The nursing profession had been particularly transformed by the success of Diana's program, with comfort care specialization becoming one of the fastest-growing areas of advanced nursing practice. The demonstration that nursing innovation could lead to significant improvements in patient outcomes had elevated the profession's status within healthcare teams and had attracted talented individuals who were drawn to the opportunity to make meaningful contributions to patient care through creative and evidence-based interventions. Lucy Chen's participation in the center's research programs had contributed valuable insights into the long-term effects of early comfort care interventions on child development and healthcare attitudes. Her articulate descriptions of how the interventions had affected her perception of medical care had influenced the development of age-appropriate comfort care techniques and had helped researchers understand the psychological mechanisms underlying the therapeutic effects of ASMR-based interventions. The center's collaboration with technology companies had led to the development of virtual reality applications that could deliver immersive comfort care experiences for children in settings where direct human intervention was not immediately available. These technological solutions had proven particularly valuable in emergency departments, ambulance services, and rural healthcare facilities where specialized comfort care practitioners might not be readily accessible. The combination of high-tech delivery systems with evidence-based therapeutic techniques had created new possibilities for extending the reach of comfort care interventions. Tommy Williams's involvement in the center's peer support programs had demonstrated the powerful impact that shared experience could have on children facing medical challenges. His ability to connect with other young patients and help them understand that medical procedures could be manageable and even positive experiences had made him an invaluable member of the center's therapeutic team. The peer support model that had been developed around his participation had been replicated at other institutions and had become a standard component of comprehensive pediatric comfort care programs. The economic impact of the center's work had extended beyond direct healthcare. Cost savings to influence regional economic development. The center's reputation as a leader in healthcare innovation had attracted biotechnology companies, research institutions, and medical device manufacturers to the Austin area, creating a cluster of healthcare innovation that had generated thousands of jobs and millions of dollars in economic activity. The demonstration that innovative healthcare approaches could drive economic growth had influenced other communities to invest in similar initiatives. The international recognition that the center had received had positioned Austin as a global destination for families seeking advanced pediatric care, particularly for children with severe medical anxiety or trauma-related healthcare avoidance. The medical tourism that had resulted from this reputation had brought patients from around the world and had contributed to the development of specialized support services that accommodated international families during extended treatment periods. Dr. Martinez's research team had made breakthrough discoveries about the neurological pathways involved in ASMR responses, leading to publications in the most prestigious medical journals and advancing the scientific understanding of sensory processing and therapeutic intervention. The basic science research that had emerged from clinical observations at the center had contributed to multiple fields of study, including neuroscience, psychology, and therapeutic intervention research. The center's influence on medical education had been profound, with medical schools around the world incorporating case studies from the Diana Rodriguez Center into their curricula. The demonstration that innovative approaches to patient care could be successfully implemented within existing healthcare systems had encouraged medical educators to emphasize creativity, critical thinking, and evidence-based innovation in their training programs. The quality improvement initiatives that had been implemented throughout the Riverside Health Network as a result of comfort care program success had led to improvements in multiple areas of patient care beyond pediatric anxiety management. The culture of innovation and evidence-based experimentation that had been fostered by the program's success had encouraged healthcare professionals throughout the network to propose and test new approaches to various clinical challenges. The center's influence on healthcare policy had extended to international organizations, with the World Health Organization incorporating guidelines for sensory-based therapeutic interventions into their recommendations for pediatric healthcare delivery. The global recognition of comfort care techniques as evidence-based medical interventions had facilitated their adoption in countries with diverse healthcare systems and cultural contexts. Diana's role as a mentor to the next generation of comfort care practitioners had become one of her most rewarding responsibilities. The young healthcare professionals who trained at the center carried forward not only the technical skills necessary for effective intervention, but also the compassionate approach to patient care that had been the foundation of the program's success. Their dedication to excellence and innovation ensured that the principles underlying the center's work would continue to influence pediatric healthcare for generations to come. The research collaborations that had developed through the center's work had created a global network of scientists and healthcare professionals who were advancing the understanding of sensory-based therapeutic interventions across multiple medical specialties. The knowledge generated through these collaborations was contributing to improved care for patients of all ages who experienced anxiety, trauma, or other challenges that could benefit from innovative therapeutic approaches. The center's success had demonstrated that healthcare innovation could emerge from clinical practice and that the insights of frontline healthcare professionals could contribute significantly to advancing medical knowledge and improving patient outcomes. Diana's journey from bedside nurse to international healthcare leader had shown that dedication to patient welfare, combined with rigorous evaluation and professional persistence, could overcome institutional resistance and create lasting positive change in healthcare delivery. 10 years had elapsed since the morning Diana Rodriguez first walked back into Riverside General Hospital, and the world of pediatric healthcare had been fundamentally transformed by the ripple effects of her courage and compassion. The woman who had once faced termination for using gentle sounds and therapeutic touch to comfort frightened children now stood before the United Nations Assembly on International Children's Day, delivering the keynote address on global initiatives to eliminate medical trauma in pediatric healthcare. The assembly hall fell silent as Diana began to speak, her voice carrying the same gentle cadence that had once calmed Lucy Chen during her darkest hours of fear. Behind her, a massive screen displayed images from comfort care centers that had been established in 47 countries, each one adapted to local cultural contexts while maintaining the core principles of compassionate, evidence-based intervention that had originated in a small hospital room in Austin, Texas. The journey to this moment had been marked by countless individual victories and systemic transformations that collectively represented a revolution in how healthcare professionals approach the psychological well-being of their youngest patients. The Diana Rodriguez Global Initiative for Pediatric Comfort Care had become the largest international healthcare collaboration focused on eliminating preventable childhood trauma, with participating institutions serving over 2 million children. Annually, through standardized comfort care protocols, Lucy Chen, now 15 years old and a sophomore at the University of Texas studying biomedical engineering, sat in the front row of the assembly hall. Her presence represented more than symbolic support for Diana's work. She had become a living testament to the long-term impact of compassionate healthcare intervention. Her research project on developing AI-assisted comfort care delivery systems had already attracted attention from major technology companies and medical device manufacturers, suggesting that the next generation of healthcare leaders would continue advancing the principles that had transformed her own childhood experience. The scientific validation of comfort care techniques had reached unprecedented levels, with the Diana Rodriguez Center's research contributing to over 300 peer-reviewed publications that had established sensory-based therapeutic intervention as a recognized medical specialty. The neurological mechanisms underlying ASMR responses had been mapped with precision that allowed for targeted interventions based on individual patient characteristics, transforming what had once been intuitive nursing care into a sophisticated medical science. Dr. Thompson, now in his mid-60s and serving as the Director of Global Medical Standards for the International Pediatric Comfort Care Association, had become one of the most respected voices in evidence-based healthcare innovation. His transformation from skeptical physician to passionate advocate had inspired countless other medical professionals to remain open to paradigm-shifting approaches when supported by rigorous evidence. His recent book on medical leadership and institutional change had become required reading in healthcare administration programs worldwide. Tommy Williams had graduated from medical school the previous spring and was beginning his residency in pediatric oncology at the institution where he had once been a terrified 7-year-old patient. His decision to pursue medicine had been directly influenced by his positive experiences during treatment, and his research focus on integrating comfort care techniques into oncology protocols promised to continue the cycle of innovation that had begun with Diana's work. His unique perspective as both former patient and future physician provided invaluable insights into the patient experience that informed protocol development and staff training. The economic impact of global comfort care implementation had exceeded all projections, with participating healthcare systems reporting an average 30% reduction in pediatric anxiety-related costs, including decreased medication usage, shorter hospital stays, and reduced need for sedation during procedures. The World Bank had identified pediatric comfort care as one of the most cost-effective healthcare interventions available, leading to increased investment in program development and expansion in developing countries where resources were limited but need was greatest. Maria Chen had been appointed as the executive director of the Diana Rodriguez Foundation, which had grown from a small family initiative into a global organization with an annual budget exceeding $50 million. The foundation's work had expanded beyond comfort care to encompass broader initiatives related to children's rights in healthcare settings, family-centered care approaches, and the development of healing environments in medical facilities. Her leadership had been instrumental in securing government support and international cooperation for comfort care initiatives in regions where healthcare infrastructure was still developing. The technology sector's embrace of comfort care applications had led to revolutionary advances in how therapeutic interventions could be delivered and monitored. Virtual reality systems could now provide immersive comfort experiences that were indistinguishable from human interaction in terms of physiological impact, while artificial intelligence algorithms could customize interventions based on real-time analysis of patient responses. These technological advances had made comfort care accessible in settings where human specialists were not available, extending the reach of effective anxiety management to rural and underserved populations worldwide. James Patterson had been elected as the chairman of the Global Healthcare Innovation Council, a position from which he advocated for policies that supported evidence-based healthcare innovation while maintaining rigorous safety standards. His experience leading Riverside General through the transformation process had provided him with unique insights into the challenges and opportunities associated with implementing systemic change in healthcare organizations. His influence had been crucial in developing international standards for evaluating and adopting innovative therapeutic approaches. The educational impact of comfort care success had transformed nursing education globally, with comfort care specialization becoming one of the most competitive areas of advanced nursing practice. Universities around the world had established graduate programs focused on sensory-based therapeutic intervention, and the first doctoral programs in comfort care science had recently enrolled their inaugural classes. The elevation of nursing, practice through Diana's innovation, had contributed to significant improvements in the profession's status and attracted talented individuals who were drawn to the opportunity for meaningful impact on patient outcomes. Amanda Foster had assumed the role of Chief Nursing Officer for the World Health Organization, where she led global initiatives to improve nursing practice standards and promote evidence-based innovation in patient care. Her experience implementing comfort care programs across multiple healthcare systems had provided her with expertise in change management and quality improvement that proved invaluable in her international role. Her advocacy had been instrumental in incorporating comfort care guidelines into WHO recommendations for pediatric healthcare delivery. The research collaborations that had emerged from the Diana Rodriguez Center had evolved into a global network of institutions working to advance understanding of therapeutic intervention, sensory processing, and healthcare delivery optimization. The International Consortium for Comfort Care Research included over 200 participating institutions across 6 continents, generating insights that were advancing multiple fields of medical science simultaneously. The collaborative model had become a template for international research cooperation in other areas of healthcare innovation. Diana's personal journey had taken her from clinical practice to global health leadership, but she had never lost sight of the fundamental mission that had driven her from the beginning, ensuring that every child could access healthcare without unnecessary fear or trauma. Her daily routine still included direct patient interaction, as she insisted on maintaining clinical practice alongside her administrative and advocacy responsibilities. The children she worked with might not understand the global impact of her innovations, but they experienced the same gentle care and compassionate attention that had characterized her nursing practice from the beginning. The cultural transformation that had occurred within healthcare institutions implementing comfort care programs extended far beyond pediatric services to influence organizational approaches to patient-centered care across all specialties. The emphasis on empathy, innovation, and evidence-based practice that had been fostered by comfort care success had created more satisfying work environments for healthcare professionals and better outcomes for patients of all ages. The ripple effects of Diana's work had touched every aspect of healthcare delivery in participating institutions. The regulatory framework surrounding comfort care practice had evolved to include international standards that facilitated the global exchange of practitioners and ensured consistent quality across different healthcare systems. Professional licensing. Bodies had developed specialized credentials for comfort care practitioners, and international reciprocity agreements allowed certified professionals to practice in multiple countries. This standardization had accelerated the global spread of effective techniques while maintaining the quality control necessary for patient safety. The influence of comfort care principles on healthcare architecture and environmental design had led to fundamental changes in how medical facilities were conceived and constructed. New hospitals around the world incorporated acoustic engineering, lighting systems, and spatial arrangements specifically designed to support therapeutic interventions and reduce environmental stresses that could exacerbate patient anxiety. The healing environment movement that had emerged from comfort care research was transforming the physical spaces where healthcare was delivered. Lucy Chen's evolution from terrified patient to confident young researcher embodied the transformational potential of effective healthcare intervention during critical developmental periods. Her work on artificial intelligence applications for comfort care delivery was pushing the boundaries of what was possible in terms of personalized therapeutic intervention, and her publications in leading engineering journals were attracting attention from researchers working at the intersection of technology and healthcare. Her trajectory suggested that the next generation of innovations might exceed even the remarkable progress that had been achieved through Diana's pioneering work. The peer support networks that had developed around comfort care programs had created lasting communities of individuals who had benefited from innovative healthcare approaches and were committed to ensuring that others could access similar care. These networks provided ongoing support for families navigating complex medical situations and served as powerful advocates for continued innovation and improvement in pediatric healthcare delivery. The collective voice of patients and families who had experienced the benefits of comfort care had been instrumental in securing policy support and funding for program expansion. Tommy Williams's unique perspective as both former patient and future physician had influenced the development of medical school curricula that emphasized patient experience and therapeutic innovation alongside traditional clinical training. His presentations to medical students about the impact of healthcare approaches on patient psychology and long-term health outcomes had inspired a new generation of physicians to consider the broader implications of their treatment decisions. His research on integrating patient experience perspectives into medical education was being replicated at medical schools around the world. The pharmaceutical industry's collaboration with comfort care researchers had led to breakthrough discoveries about the neurochemical mechanisms underlying therapeutic intervention, resulting in the development of new medications that could enhance the effectiveness of sensory-based treatments. These advances had opened new possibilities for treating anxiety disorders, trauma-related conditions, and other psychological challenges that could benefit from combined pharmacological and sensory interventions. The integration of traditional medical approaches with innovative therapeutic techniques had created synergistic effects that exceeded what either approach could achieve independently. The long-term follow-up studies of children who had received comfort care interventions continued to reveal benefits that extended well into adulthood, including higher rates of preventive healthcare utilization, greater treatment compliance, and more positive relationships with healthcare providers. These findings had significant implications for public health and healthcare cost management, suggesting that investments in pediatric comfort care could yield substantial returns through improved health outcomes and reduced healthcare utilization throughout individuals' lifespans. The global recognition of Diana's work had included numerous awards and honors that acknowledged her contributions to healthcare innovation and patient advocacy. However, the recognition that meant the most to her came from the letters and messages she received from families whose children had benefited from comfort care interventions. These personal testimonials reminded her daily of the human impact of her work and reinforced her commitment to continuing the fight for compassionate, evidence-based healthcare for all children. The international conference that was held annually in Austin had grown into the largest gathering of healthcare professionals dedicated to pediatric patient experience and therapeutic innovation. The conference attracted thousands of attendees from around the world and had become the premier forum for sharing research findings, clinical innovations, and policy developments related to comfort care. The economic impact of the conference on the Austin community was substantial, but its influence on global healthcare practice was immeasurable. The documentary film about Diana's journey and the global transformation of pediatric healthcare that had resulted from her advocacy had won multiple international awards and had been translated into 37 languages. The film's distribution through educational channels had introduced comfort care concepts to millions of healthcare professionals and had inspired countless individuals to advocate for innovation and excellence in their own practice environments. The power of storytelling to drive social change had been demonstrated through the film's impact on healthcare policy and practice. As Diana concluded her address to the United Nations Assembly, she reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought her from a small hospital room in Austin to the world's most prominent international forum. The principles that had guided her from the beginning remained unchanged. Every child deserved access to healthcare that was both clinically excellent and emotionally supportive, and healthcare professionals had a responsibility to advocate for innovation when it could improve patient outcomes. The standing ovation that followed her presentation was not just recognition of her individual achievements, but acknowledgement of the collective effort that had transformed pediatric healthcare worldwide. The delegates, representing nearly 200 countries, were committing their nations to implementing comfort care standards that would ensure no child would experience unnecessary trauma during medical treatment. The unanimous adoption of the Global Declaration on Pediatric Comfort Care represented the culmination of a decade of advocacy, research, and implementation efforts that had touched millions of lives. The future of pediatric healthcare looked fundamentally different than it had 10 years earlier, when Diana first returned to work after her termination crisis. Children around the world were receiving care that acknowledged their emotional needs alongside their medical requirements, and healthcare professionals were equipped with evidence-based tools for providing comfort and support during medical procedures. The transformation had been so complete that it was difficult to imagine how healthcare had ever been delivered without these essential components of comprehensive patient care. Diana Rodriguez had demonstrated that a single individual's commitment to compassionate care could indeed change the world, but her greatest satisfaction came from knowing that the principles she had championed would continue to evolve and improve long after her own career had ended. The next generation of healthcare professionals would build upon the foundation she had established, creating innovations that would further advance the cause of humane, effective medical care for children everywhere. The gentle sounds and therapeutic touch that had once been viewed as unconventional nursing practice had become recognized as essential components of modern pediatric healthcare, proving that the most profound changes often began with the simplest acts of human compassion. The legacy of Diana Rodriguez would endure not in monuments or institutions, but in the countless children who would receive better care, because one nurse had refused to accept that fear and trauma were inevitable parts of the healthcare experience. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.